Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books in Bytes. Today, we're diving into the world of Oblomov by Ivan Goncharov. Now, I think most people listening probably already know the basics. We meet Ilya Ilyich Oblomov, a Russian nobleman
Yeah.
in 19th century St. Petersburg, who can't seem to get off his couch.
And that's the hook, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, this seemingly simple story of just like a lazy landowner, it actually brings up all these really profound questions
What about that?
about society,
Yeah.
ambition, and really the human condition.
Exactly. So I think before we get into all the details of the plot, maybe we can set the stage a little bit. What are some of the big themes or ideas that we see Goncharov grappling with?
Well, one of the most obvious is this idea of Oblomovchina. And that's actually a term that was coined in response to the book. It's the state of apathy, inertia, this kind of spiritual paralysis. That goes way beyond just being lazy. And Goncharov uses Oblomov to really explore how this shows up in individuals, but also even in an entire social class.
So it's more than just a funny story about a guy who loves his pajamas?
Oh yeah, much more. We also see critiques of the Russian aristocracy, the clash between tradition and modernity, and even this deep dive into nostalgia and the sort of allure of an idealized past.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. Now we're ready to dig into the story itself.
Yeah.
Goncharov doesn't waste any time, does he? He throws us right into Oblomov's world, and it's quite a sight.
Oh, it's a brilliant opening. We find him in his dressing gown on the sofa, practically unable to move, just from indecision. He's surrounded by all this stuff, unopened letters, unfinished business, and this general feeling of almost comical stagnation.
And of course, Zakhar, his servant, who embodies this whole master-servant dynamic of the time. He enables Oblomov's inertia. But he also seems exasperated by it all. There's this wonderfully absurd back and forth between us.
It really is. It's such a clever way to highlight how ridiculous the situation is. On the surface, it's funny, but underneath it all, there's this darker sense of dependence and even this dysfunctional symbiosis between the two.
It's not even just that Oblomov is lazy. It's like he's trapped in this cycle of inaction. And Zakhar's both participating in it, but also a victim of it.
And I think it's really important to remember the social context. I mean, Oblomov is a product of his class, raised with a sense of entitlement and being totally detached from practical matters. He's never had to work. He's never had to deal with real challenges. So he retreats into this world of mental comfort.
And speaking of mental comfort, we have to talk about Oblomov's daydreams, especially those about his childhood estate. Oblomovka, it's like this idyllic, almost mythical place in his memory.
Yeah, Oblomovka becomes this symbol of everything that Oblomov wants. Peace, abundance, no responsibilities whatsoever. It's a world where time moves slowly, nature provides everything, and the biggest decision you have to make all day is what you're going to eat for lunch.
Like a fairy tale almost. Goncharov uses such rich and evocative language to describe it. You can almost feel Oblomov just sinking deeper and deeper into this dream world as he's trying to escape the anxieties of his present reality.
And those anxieties are very real, even if they seem kind of trivial to us. Remember that letter from his estate manager? Oblomov freaks out, but he never actually does anything to solve the problem.
Which brings us to the contrast.
Yeah.
Between Oblomov and his friends, we see characters like Volkov, Sabinsky, and Penkin, who all represent different parts of St. Petersburg society, all busy, all chasing their ambitions, trying to navigate social circles.
And then there's Stoltz, the ultimate opposite of Oblomov. Energetic, practical, always on the move, driven by this sense of purpose that Oblomov can't even imagine.
And I love their conversations. Stoltz is always trying to push Oblomov, get him to engage with the world, make something of himself. But Oblomov just deflects, makes excuses, and retreats further into his
inertia. He sees what Stoltz has, the possibilities, this potential for a different life, but at the same time, he's terrified of all the effort and the uncertainty that comes along with it.
Yeah, and that fear is rooted in his childhood, which we see through all those flashbacks to Oblomovka.
Oblomovka. It's not even just a place. It's more like a state of mind. Goncharov creates this incredibly vivid image of a world that's steeped in tradition, ritual, and this profound aversion to change. It's almost like time has stopped there.
Yeah. Everything is about comfort and indulgence.
Right.
There are these long descriptions of feasts, naps, just these leisurely conversations, no work, no struggle.
Exactly. And even the stories they tell, all the folk tales and superstitions that are everywhere in Oblomovka, they reinforce the sense of passivity and just accepting things. Do you remember the story of Nermel? the fool who catches a pike, that grants all his wishes.
Oh, yes. He just lays around on his stove.
Yeah.
And the pike does everything for him. It's like the perfect fantasy.
Right, and it really speaks to this deeper yearning, this desire for a world where you don't have to work for anything, where happiness is just given to you, not earned, which is a really appealing idea, especially to a child.
But it also sets up this impossible standard.
Right.
Oblomov carries this longing for effortless fulfillment into adulthood. And it clashes so hard with the reality of life in St. Petersburg.
Absolutely. And the tragedy is that even when he has opportunities to change, to step outside his comfort zone, he always ends up retreating back into that Oblomovka mindset.
And that leads us to Olga. She's like a breath of fresh air blowing into Oblomov's world. She's so intelligent, vibrant, and she truly believes that she can wake him up from his lumber.
Their relationship is so interesting, this dance between hope and despair, attraction and frustration. You see these glimpses of change in Oblomov. He starts reading, going out, having these intellectual conversations. And for a minute, it seems like he might actually break free.
There's that scene where they're walking in the garden and Olga's challenging him to think differently, to see the world in a new way. Is such a powerful moment.
And it leads to beautiful, it's a little awkward. Confession of love. Remember, he says, "I love you, Olga, because you made me want to live again." You can see a flash of the man he could be.
But it's so fleeting. That's what makes their breakup so heartbreaking. Oblomov's love for Olga becomes just another way to escape. He wants to possess her, take her energy and vitality, instead of rising to meet her challenge.
And Olga sees that, which is why she leaves. It's a decision made out of love, but also a self-preservation. She realizes that. She can't save him. He has to choose to save himself.
And he doesn't, does he? It's like he takes this rejection as proof that change is too hard, too risky.
Which is a pretty devastating conclusion. It leads to his final descent into what I guess we could call full-blown Oblomovchina.
And that last chapter, it's both tragic and strangely comforting.
Right.
It is. It's a curious kind of piece. He ends up in a new apartment, but it's almost exactly like his old one. He gets into this routine with his landlady, Agafia Matvievna. She's basically like a mother figure to him, taking care of his every need.
She even fixes that dressing gown of his. It's almost like Goncharov is making a point. Oblomov has completely given in to his inertia. Yeah. The dressing gown becomes this powerful symbol. It represents him, hiding from the world, choosing passivity. And with Agafia, he basically recreates Oblomovka right there in St. Petersburg.
But the interesting thing is, he doesn't seem that unhappy. I mean, he has moments where he thinks about things and realizes he's wasted his potential. But there's also this sense of acceptance, even contentment.
That's the thing about Oblomov. He knows his flaws, but he just doesn't have the will to change. Remember, he tells Stoltz, "I understand it all, but I have no strength." He's resigned to his fate. He's actively choosing inertia over self-improvement.
And Stoltz, oh, poor Stoltz, he just can't wrap his head around it. He sees Oblomov like he's fallen from grace, like he's betrayed everything Stoltz stands for.
Their final meeting is so sad. Stoltz is horrified. When he finds out that Oblomov has married Agafia and that they have a child together, it really shows just how far apart they've grown, how different their paths have become.
And yet, there's still this tenderness between them. Stoltz still cares about Oblomov. Even though he can't understand him, he even promises to look after Oblomov's son, hoping to save him from the same fate.
It's a tiny bit of hope in this story that's mostly about resignation, but it also emphasizes how Oblomovchina can repeat itself. Goncharov seems to be saying that. It's not just a personal flaw, but something that can be passed down from one generation to the next.
It makes you think. But then again, Oblomov dies peacefully, surrounded by all the comforts that he loves. He even dreams of Oblomovka right before he dies. Is Goncharov saying that this passive way of life is actually a form of happiness?
I think that's the question. Is Oblomov a cautionary tale, a tragedy, or something else entirely? Is there a part of us that envies Oblomov a little bit, his ability to just let go, to be content while the world goes on around him?
It definitely makes me think about ambition, productivity, that constant pressure to always be striving for more. What about you? Where do you fall between Oblomov and Stoltz?
I think the most important takeaway is that there's no right answer. The real challenge is finding that balance, figuring out how to live a full life without going to either extreme. Maybe Goncharov is suggesting the best way to live is somewhere in between. The constant striving of Stoltz and the peaceful but limited existence of Oblomov.
That's a great thought to leave us with. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe, just maybe, give yourself a little bit of that Oblomov-style relaxation. You deserve it.